Afternoon all, I'm Rico of Off Branch Dreams, and this here is the model I've been using for the last 3 months, right, for the season of winter. And keeping with tradition, I've decided to make a new model for spring, right? I want to make a new one every 3 months, or I guess every change of seasons, just to learn new skills and keep myself from getting rusty. The process for this new model took me about 4 hours, but I've taken that and sped up the footage, shrunk it down to about 7 minutes. So I want to show you my redesign for spring of 2025. So let me get out of the way and turn this on and hit go. Or if I can find it, hit play. There we go. So you can see here, once I get through the first bit of color copying over, that I'm going for a geode design, which is, maybe not your first thought for spring, but, you might think, new plants and flowers and growth and all those things, but none of those really had the shade of purple I was looking for. I'm in a bit of a purple mood for the last little while, and I just wanted to be purple. So geodes do that. I've got a better reason for it, but I spent like 20 to 30 minutes talking about it in the working session, which are linked below if you really want to watch it. If not, short answer, purple. What you see here now is I'm just making the rocks for it, or the rock for it. I go through a handful of different filters, trying out different ways to get it look like it's got a bit of a texture to it, right? Because no rock is perfectly smooth. Wind up with one that looks a little bit like one you might find in a river that's had some time to set there, some time to erode away, but not so long that it's perfectly smooth, right? You might even say that it's a rough stone that's been polished a little bit. But I go through that pretty quickly. Next step, obviously, is to actually fill in the geode, put the little crystals in place. And I do this in what is probably the most labor-intensive way I could have, which is to make every individual crystal, group them into clusters, and then just copy and place them in, just plonk them in. If I was a smarter man, I would have just made a paintbrush out of all the pieces and then just done one little go around in a loop. Obviously didn't do that, didn't think to do that until after I was done with the full process. Admittedly, not entirely sure how much time would have saved. I think I only spend, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes piecing these in. Eventually get a process put together to make it pretty quick. But go that, throw a rock in front of it, trim out the edges, and then I spend a little bit of time playing around with like luminosity levels. Decided I don't want that, right? I had originally planned to make the crystals a little bit clear, a little bit see-through. Wound up not doing that. You see me trying to figure out how I want to do sparkles, because the one trick I wanted to learn this time was normal maps, or clipping maps, or transparency maps. Lots of names for it. I believe the Live 2D software calls them clipping masks. Didn't figure it out in that moment in time. Spend a little bit of time trying to figure out how I want to make the sparkles, which are the things that I'm going to be adding transparency for. Again, don't find them out immediately. Jump to the head, let some ideas cook in the background, but work on the head. I try to copy over the face from the last model and then decide that it's a little bit too round for, a crystalline look. So I ended up making a new one from scratch, just shaping in some eyes. I don't get too fancy with the face this time. I feel like I spent way too much time on the last model with the face. So this time I'm just throwing some basic shapes in, calling it good. Spend some time just doing line, thickening it out, make it sharpening the edges up, because, gems, crystals, kind of sharp, or they can be. And then I add a little bit of a bevel, or at least I think it's a bevel there on the edge. Go ahead and add in these closed eyes, which is something that I've not done for a while. I always tend to forget the fact that when you close your eyes, you can still see your eyes. And there was a cut from one session to the next. Did this over the course of a day, but I eventually decide on how I want to do the you know, the sparkles, right? The not the glitter, the sparkles. Yeah, sure. And you see me trying out a handful of ways to do like the normal map, or I guess the transparency. I end up not figuring out how I want to do that until much later on. But there we go. There's the initial export with the transparency that I'm not totally sure is going to work. And I spend, I genuinely think like 30 to 40 minutes just trying to get the transparency to work the way I want it to, before I realized that, I thought I found it out here pretty soon. I guess not. But I end up deciding to use just like a spotlight pattern instead of using this radial thing that you can see right now. I think it should pop up here pretty quickly. Although I do spend a lot of time futzing with it. Yeah, here you go. I just make a spotlight and then turn that into a normal map, and then I just, you know, I'm going to move it around the ring to sort of cast a spotlight where I want the sparkles to be, rather than trying to make this complicated rotating thing that actually does it all in one. From here on out, it's mostly just, you know, simple shape stuff, or simple facial animation things, right? Getting the blinks to work, getting the eyebrows to work, getting the, you know, left and right and up and down, looking around to work. Spend a little bit of time figuring out how to do the keyframing on this, because I had forgotten how to do that. And I do bind that to breathe, which is an interesting choice. I might come back and fix that later, but for now it's bound to breathe, or the automatic breathe gradient. I find that I'm not happy with the way that some of the, I guess the, what would they be, art meshes are set up for this. End up making some custom ones. I think this is the first time I've actually ever had a face that has a bit of three-dimensionality to it, right? All right, there's like that bevel will move now with what I've got when I turn my head side to side. You know, again, doing some custom art meshes on the mouth. Went with the same kind of mouth pattern as I did for the winter design, which is no teeth, no mouth interior, just, you know, 2 sets of lips that move and stretch to fill that need. And then, yeah, here you can see it's I spent 10-20 minutes just futzing around with the settings, right, making sure that everything is bound and mapped. You can see that it imported the cover plate, which I'm going to eventually add an animation to, you know, put that on and take that off, but for now, oh, that was the whole thing. But for now, it's just the whole thing bound together. Let me pause it. And let me turn this off and turn, where is it? Turn this on. So here's the final model. This is what I'm going to be rolling with for the spring of 2025. I'm fairly happy with it. You know, for what ended up being about 3.5 hours of work, 4 hours of work, it could be a lot worse. I'm pretty happy with what I did. I'm pretty happy with the speed at which I was able to get it done. Are there improvements? Yes. Definitely going to need to learn how to make a custom brush if I want to do something like this again. Definitely want to spend some more time working with the transparency and that kind of stuff, because the sooner I can get to having a mouth interior, the better. Because right now I don't have a mouth interior, and part of that is because I wanted to learn how to do transparency in order to do that. But yeah, the full working sessions will be below. They'll have links to them. There'll be unlisted videos. The only links to them will be in this one, in the notes box, I guess. And if you're seeing this today, it goes up, or if you're seeing this anytime, you can catch me live Saturday mornings. That'd be 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time, or whatever your local translation of that is. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you and, you know, rolling with this model for the next couple of months. But yeah, that's all. I've been Rico of Off-Branch Dreams, and I'll see you around.